I never thought 8 months of meticulous client relationship building could be destroyed with a single email. But watching Jason Holbrook's smug smile as he explained why I was being streamlined out of the VPS account taught me something valuable. Sometimes the best revenge is simply doing your job better than the person trying to sabotage you. Let me back up. Coraxis Dynamics isn't a household name, but in the world of B2B tech consulting for mid-sized manufacturers, we're solid. Denver-based, about 200 employees, and we specialize in digital transformation projects that actually work. I'd been there 3 years as a senior client success manager, and I was good at what I did, really good. My specialty wasn't flashy presentations or glad-handing at conferences. I was the person who remembered that the plant manager in Ohio preferred Friday afternoon calls because his kids had soccer practice. I knew which procurement officers wanted 3-page summaries and which ones wanted bullet points. I built relationships the old-fashioned way, by actually listening and then delivering on every promise, no matter how small. Vanguard Precision Systems had been my account for 8 months. VPS manufactured high-precision components for aerospace and medical devices, the kind of work where a 0.001-inch tolerance error could ground aircraft or kill patients. Their CEO, Russell Danner, was legendarily demanding. Their head of procurement, Ava Chen, was brilliant, direct, and had zero patience for corporate BS. The contract was worth $2.5 million over 3 years, automation upgrades, system integration, and ongoing support for 3 regional plants. For Coraxis, it was make or break for Q3 numbers. For me, it represented months of 6 a.m. calls with their East Coast team, weekend site visits to understand their legacy systems, and countless hours mapping their workflow inefficiencies. I loved every minute of it. Ava and I had developed what I thought was a solid working relationship. She'd call me directly with questions instead of going through the official channels. When their Michigan plant had a system crash in July, I was on a plane the same day, working through the weekend to get them back online. Russell himself had sent a thank you email, the first time in VPS history, according to Ava. Everything was tracking perfectly toward renewal. The technical specifications were locked in, the implementation timeline was agreed upon, and VPS had even expressed interest in expanding the contract to include their new facility in Phoenix. Then Jason Holbrook decided he wanted to take point on closing the deal. Jason was my direct supervisor, though supervisor is generous. Regional account manager was his title, but mostly he swooped in during the final stages of deals to shake hands and take credit. He was good at the performance aspects of sales, the presentations, the executive dinners, the golf course conversations that somehow always ended up in expense reports. What Jason wasn't good at was details. Or follow-through. Or anything that required more than surface-level engagement with actual client needs. The first sign of trouble came in late August during our weekly pipeline review. Jason leaned back in his chair with that practiced executive smile and said, "Leah, I think it's time I step up on VPS. Big deals like this need senior-level attention, and Russell Danner expects to work with someone at my level." I kept my voice level. Actually, Russell specifically mentioned in our last call that he appreciates the consistency of working with the same contact throughout the process. Ava's told me multiple times that account stability is crucial for VPS. "That's exactly my point," Jason replied, not missing a beat. "They're ready to graduate from the relationship building phase to serious negotiations. This is where my experience comes in." I pulled up my notes on my laptop. The serious negotiations are already happening. We're finalizing the Phoenix expansion scope next week, and there are still some technical integration questions about their legacy MRP system that... Leah. Jason's tone shifted to what he probably thought was patient mentoring but landed somewhere closer to condescending. "I appreciate all the groundwork you've laid. Really. But VPS is worth $2.5 million. Coraxis needs someone with proven closing experience to bring this home." Marcus Reed, our solutions engineer, was sitting across the table, ostensibly reviewing technical specs but clearly listening to every word. He caught my eye and gave the slightest shake of his head, a warning I should have heeded. "Of course," I said. "What did you have in mind?" "I'll take the lead on all executive communications going forward. You can stay involved on the implementation side, but I'll handle Russell and Ava directly. Sound good?" It wasn't a question, and we both knew it. The next morning, I opened Outlook to find myself removed from the VPS email thread. 8 months of correspondence, technical discussions, timeline negotiations, and relationship building, gone. Just like that. I stared at my screen for a full minute, then walked to Jason's office. Hey, I'm not seeing the VPS emails this morning. IT issue. Jason didn't look up from his monitor. Oh, that. Yeah, I streamlined the communication flow. Too many cooks spoil the broth, you know? Ava mentioned feeling overwhelmed by the number of people reaching out from our side. That was a lie. Ava had specifically praised our team coordination in her last feedback survey. I should probably stay looped in for implementation details, I said carefully. There are some technical nuances about there. I've got it covered. Jason finally looked at me, and there was something triumphant in his expression. Marcus can handle any technical questions that come up. You've got other accounts that need attention. I stood there for another moment, waiting for him to crack a smile or admit this was some kind of test. When that didn't happen, I nodded once and left his office. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done in 3 years at CoreAxis. I started keeping a detailed log of everything related to the VPS account. Not just my usual project notes, but timestamps, email screenshots, and records of every conversation. Some instinct told me I was going to need proof of what had actually happened. Within a week, my phone started ringing. Leah, it's Ava. Quick question about the Phoenix timeline. Jason's latest proposal has the system integration happening before the infrastructure audit. That doesn't match what we discussed. I was in my car, heading to lunch. Can you forward me the email? I'm not on that thread anymore. What do you mean you're not on the thread? Jason's handling executive communications now. But if there's a timeline issue, I can clarify with him and... No, don't worry about it. I'll figure it out. She hung up, but something in her voice made me pull into a parking lot and think. Ava Chen didn't figure things out when she had questions. She asked direct questions and expected direct answers. If she was confused about something we'd already discussed and agreed upon, that meant Jason was changing agreements without understanding why they existed in the first place. 2 days later, Marcus stopped by my cube. Hey, weird question. Do you remember what VPS said about their compliance requirements for the Michigan plant? Jason's asking me to modify the security protocols, but I thought they had some FDA thing that... They do. FDA 21 CFR Part 11 compliance. It's why we built in the additional authentication layers and audit trails. I pulled up my notes. What kind of modifications? Marcus looked uncomfortable. He wants to simplify the user authentication process. Says it's over-engineered and VPS will appreciate a cleaner interface. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Marcus, those authentication requirements aren't suggestions. They're federal regulations. If VPS gets audited and can't demonstrate compliance, they could lose their medical device manufacturing licenses. Yeah, that's what I thought. But Jason says you were being too conservative and that he's cleared the changes with Ava. He's cleared regulatory compliance changes with procurement? Not with their compliance officer or legal team. Marcus shrugged, but his expression said everything. That evening, I sat in my apartment staring at my laptop. I had 2 choices: let Jason handle it and hope he figured out the regulatory requirements before causing problems, or find a way to ensure VPS got the right information. The smart career move was obviously to let Jason learn his lesson. If he screwed up, it wouldn't be my fault. I'd been explicitly removed from the account. But here's the thing about spending 8 months building a relationship with a client: you start to care about their success beyond just your commission check. Ava had trusted me with details about VPS's long-term growth plans. Russell had shared his concerns about their aging workforce and the need for systems that would still work in 10 years. I knew these people, and they were counting on CoreAxis to get this right. Plus, and I might as well be honest about this, Jason's smug smile when he cut me out of the emails had been haunting me for weeks. Not because my feelings were hurt, but because it represented everything wrong with how deals get managed at too many companies. The person who builds the relationship gets sidelined so the person with the fancier title can take credit for the close. I opened my laptop and started drafting an email. Hi Ava. I hope you're doing well. I wanted to follow up on a technical detail from our previous discussions about compliance requirements for the Michigan plant. I know Jason's handling the main negotiations now, but I realized we never sent you the updated documentation on FDA 21 CFR Part 11 adherence that you requested in July. I've attached the compliance framework we discussed, along with the authentication protocols that ensure you'll pass any regulatory audits. I know this level of detail isn't usually exciting, but given VPS's reputation for precision, I figured you'd want to have it in your files. Please let me know if you have any questions. Happy to walk through any of the technical aspects that might be unclear. Best, Leah. I sent it at 7:43 p.m. on a Thursday, then closed my laptop and tried not to think about whether I'd just made a massive career mistake. Ava's response came at 6:15 the next morning. Leah. Thank you for this. I was actually just reviewing Jason's latest proposal and had questions about several items that seemed different from what we agreed on previously. Do you have 20 minutes for a call this morning? I know you're not the primary contact anymore, but there are some continuity issues I'd like to clarify. Best, Ava. We talked for 47 minutes. Ava's concerns weren't minor technical quibbles. Jason had fundamentally misunderstood VPS's requirements and was proposing a solution that would save core access money in the short term but create massive problems for VPS within 6 months. The simplified authentication protocols would indeed create compliance issues. The modified timeline would leave VPS without backup systems during their peak production season. The revised support structure would reduce costs but eliminate the proactive monitoring that prevented the kind of system crashes that had cost them $300,000 in July. Leah, Ava said near the end of our call, I need to ask you something directly. Are you still involved in this project or not? Because the person I've been talking to for 8 months understands our business, and the person I've been talking to this week doesn't. I chose my words carefully. I'm committed to making sure VPS gets the best possible outcome from this partnership, whatever level of involvement that requires. Good. Because I'm about to make this complicated. The next week unfolded like a slow-motion train wreck that I had a front-row seat to watch but couldn't officially acknowledge. Jason, confident that he was handling sophisticated executive negotiations, started making promises that sounded impressive in PowerPoint but were either technically impossible or financially unsustainable. He offered a 6-month implementation timeline for a project that required at least 9 months of careful phasing. He promised 24/7 support coverage for the price of standard business hours. He suggested custom software modifications that would require rebuilding core components of our platform. Meanwhile, Ava was forwarding me these proposals with increasingly frustrated messages. Is this realistic? Did we actually agree to this timeline? Help me understand how this pricing works. Each time, I'd send back detailed explanations of why the original specifications existed and what the real-world implications of Jason's changes would be. I never criticized Jason directly, but I also never pretended his revisions made sense. Marcus was having his own crisis. Jason kept asking him to modify technical specifications without understanding why the original requirements existed, then getting annoyed when Marcus pushed back. He wants me to tell VPS that we can integrate with their ERP system in 4 weeks, Marcus told me during a coffee break. I keep explaining that we haven't even completed the system audit yet, and he just says, figure it out, that's what they want to hear. What does Ava say when you explain the timeline? That's the thing, he doesn't want me talking to Ava directly. He says all technical communications should go through him first. Marcus shook his head. Leah, I've never seen him this territorial about a deal before. I had, though. Jason got like this whenever he felt insecure about his technical knowledge, which was most of the time when dealing with sophisticated clients. Rather than admit what he didn't understand, he'd try to control all the information flow to prevent clients from realizing he was out of his depth. The strategy usually worked with smaller deals where clients were less technically sophisticated. But Ava Chen wasn't some small-town purchasing manager who could be impressed with buzzwords and confident handshakes. She'd been managing complex technology implementations for 15 years, and she knew the difference between confident competence and confident incompetence. On a Wednesday in mid-September, I got a call that changed everything. Leah, it's Ava. I need to ask you something confidential. I was walking between meetings, but something in her tone made me duck into an empty conference room. Russell and I have been discussing the core access proposal, and we're concerned about some inconsistencies we're seeing. The technical specifications keep changing, the timeline seems unrealistic, and frankly, we're not getting clear answers to our questions. She paused, and I stayed quiet. Here's what I want to do. Next Friday, Russell and I are going to be in Denver for another meeting. We'd like to sit down with Core Access to get clarity on exactly what we're buying and what the real implementation timeline looks like. But I want 2 separate conversations, one with Jason, since he's apparently the decision-maker now, and one with you, since you actually understand our business. My heart started beating faster. Ava, I'm not sure Jason is leading the account now, and I don't want to create any confusion about.
Leah.
Her voice was firm. Russell Danner is about to sign a $2.5 million contract. If we can't get straight answers about what we're buying, we're going to start looking at other vendors. I don't care about your internal politics. I care about not making a mistake that could cost VPS a fortune and 6 months of downtime. When I didn't respond immediately, she continued. You don't have to undermine your colleague. You don't have to criticize anyone. Just answer our questions honestly and help us understand what we're actually getting for our money. Can you do that?
Yes, I said. I can do that.
Good. I'll send you a calendar invite for Friday afternoon.
And Leah?
Don't mention this to Jason yet. Let me handle that part. I spent Thursday night preparing like I was defending a doctoral thesis. I printed copies of every technical specification, implementation timeline, and cost breakdown. I reviewed 8 months of meeting notes and email conversations. I prepared answers for every question I thought they might ask and several they probably wouldn't. Most importantly, I prepared myself mentally for the possibility that this would end my career at CoreAxis. If Jason found out I'd been meeting separately with VPS, he'd have grounds to fire me for insubordination. Even if he didn't, my reputation within the company would be destroyed. But sitting in my apartment Friday morning, drinking coffee and reviewing my notes one more time, I realized something. I didn't care about the political consequences anymore. For 8 months, I'd done everything right. I'd built a relationship based on trust and competence. I'd delivered on every promise and solved every problem. If CoreAxis wanted to throw that away so Jason could have his moment in the spotlight, that said more about CoreAxis than it did about me. At 2 p.m., I was sitting in conference room C with Russell Danner and Ava Chen. Russell was exactly what I'd expected from our phone calls, sharp, direct, and completely uninterested in small talk. He was wearing jeans and a button-down shirt that probably cost more than my car payment, and he had the kind of quiet intensity that came from running a successful company for 20 years. Leah, he said, settling into his chair, Ava tells me you understand our business better than anyone else at CoreAxis. Is that accurate? I understand your current systems and long-term goals, I replied carefully. I've spent a lot of time learning how VPS operates and what challenges you're trying to solve.
Good.
Because I'm confused about what we're buying, and confusion makes me nervous when I'm writing 7-figure checks. For the next 90 minutes, Russell and Ava asked me questions that demonstrated exactly how much Jason had misunderstood about their needs. They weren't testing me, they were trying to figure out whether the project was even feasible as currently proposed. I answered every question as directly as I could. Yes, the timeline Jason had proposed was unrealistic, but here's what a realistic timeline would look like and why. No, the simplified authentication system wouldn't meet their compliance requirements, but here's how we could streamline the user experience without sacrificing regulatory adherence. Yes, the pricing seemed high for what Jason was offering, but here's what they were actually getting for their money and why each component was necessary. Let me ask you something, Russell said near the end of our meeting. If you were in my position, would you sign this contract?
I took a breath.
I would sign a contract with CoreAxis, but not the one you're currently looking at. The technical capabilities are solid, the support structure is proven, and the long-term value is exactly what VPS needs. But the current proposal has some elements that would create problems for both of us.
Such as?
The timeline is compressed in a way that would force us to skip quality control steps that prevent the kind of system crashes you experienced in July. The compliance framework has been simplified in ways that could create regulatory risks. And the support structure has been modified to reduce costs, but it eliminates the proactive monitoring that's prevented 3 major issues over the past 6 months. Russell and Ava exchanged a look. Can you fix those issues?
Ava asked. Yes.
The original specifications we developed together over the past 8 months address all of those concerns. It's a more expensive solution with a longer timeline, but it's designed specifically for VPS's requirements rather than generic industry standards. Russell leaned back in his chair. How much more expensive, and how much longer? I pulled out my calculator and ran through the numbers we'd originally agreed on before Jason started making modifications. About 18% higher cost, spread over an additional 3 months of implementation. But it includes comprehensive compliance documentation, redundant backup systems, and proactive support that would prevent downtime during your peak production seasons. Show me the breakdown. I spent 20 minutes walking through every line item, explaining why each component existed and what problems it solved. Russell asked pointed questions about ROI timelines and total cost of ownership. Ava wanted details about integration protocols and staff training requirements. They weren't just evaluating the proposal, they were evaluating me. Could I answer technical questions without BS? Did I understand their business well enough to anticipate problems? Was I someone they could trust to deliver on promises even when things got complicated? Finally, Russell stood up. Leah, I'm going to be direct with you. We've been working with Coraxis for 8 months, and until recently, we were confident about moving forward. But the past few weeks have raised concerns about whether your company actually understands what we need. He paused, and I felt my stomach drop. However, this conversation has convinced me that someone at Coraxis definitely understands our business. The question is whether that person is going to be involved in actually delivering the project. That's not really my decision, I said carefully. Maybe it should be, Ava said. Russell, what do you think about making this a condition of the contract? Russell smiled for the first time all afternoon. I think that's exactly what we're going to do. Monday morning arrived with the subtlety of a fire alarm. I was barely through the door when Sasha Mendez, our director of client strategy, appeared at my desk. Leah, I need to see you in my office. Now. Sasha was normally the most even-tempered executive at Coraxis, but she looked like someone had spent her weekend explaining why a $2.5 million deal was suddenly in jeopardy. Jason was already in her office when I arrived, and his expression suggested he knew exactly why we were all there. Sit down, Leah. Sasha closed the door behind me. I got a call from Russell Danner this morning. Apparently, VPS is ready to sign their contract, but they have some conditions. I stayed quiet. They want you designated as the primary account manager for the entire project lifecycle. They want the original technical specifications you developed, not the modified version they received last week. And they want a written guarantee that you'll be personally involved in implementation and support. She looked between Jason and me. They also mentioned that they'd been frustrated with communication inconsistencies over the past few weeks, and that a meeting with you on Friday clarified their concerns. Jason's face was turning an interesting shade of red. She went behind my back. I specifically told her I was handling VPS communications, and she scheduled a secret meeting to undermine. Stop talking. Sasha's voice was ice cold. Jason, did you remove Leah from the VPS email thread without authorization from me or anyone else in leadership? I streamlined communications to avoid. Did you remove her from the email thread? Yes, but... Did you modify technical specifications that had already been agreed upon with the client? Jason's jaw tightened. I made strategic adjustments to improve our competitive position. Did you run those adjustments by our technical team to ensure they were feasible? Marcus was being overly conservative about. Answer the question, Jason. Did you run the technical modifications by Marcus before proposing them to the client? The silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. I see. Sasha turned to me. Leah, did you schedule this meeting to sabotage Jason's negotiations or to ensure VPS got accurate information about their project? To ensure they got accurate information. They had specific questions about regulatory compliance and implementation timelines that were causing confusion. Did you criticize Jason or Coraxis during this meeting? No. I answered their technical questions and explained why certain specifications existed. Did you encourage them to make their approval contingent on your involvement? No. That was entirely their decision. Sasha nodded slowly. Jason, you're dismissed. Please wait in your office while I finish this conversation. After Jason left, Sasha looked at me for a long moment. Leah, I'm going to ask you something, and I want a completely honest answer. Do you think you acted appropriately over the past few weeks? I thought carefully before responding. I think I prioritized the client's success and Coraxis's reputation over office politics. If that was inappropriate, then yes, I acted inappropriately. Fair enough. She leaned back in her chair. Here's where we are. VPS is offering us a $2.8 million contract, more than originally planned because they want to add the Phoenix facility immediately rather than waiting for Phase 2. But they'll only sign if you're the primary account manager and if we implement the project according to your original specifications.
She paused.
They've also indicated that if we can't agree to those terms, they'll begin evaluating other vendors immediately.
My mouth went dry. What does that mean for Jason?
That's not your concern right now. What I need to know is whether you're prepared to take full responsibility for a $2.8 million client relationship, including implementation oversight, ongoing support, and account growth. I thought about 8 months of 6 a.m. calls and weekend site visits. I thought about Ava's trust and Russell's exacting standards. I thought about Jason's smug smile when he cut me out of the emails.
Yes, I said.
I'm prepared for that responsibility.
Good.
Because as of this morning, you're our new Regional Account Director for Strategic Manufacturing Clients. Jason is being transferred to our training and development team, where his presentation skills will be valuable for internal projects.
I blinked. I'm sorry, what?
You're being promoted, Leah. The VPS situation made it clear that we've been underutilizing your abilities and letting internal politics interfere with client relationships. Russell Danner specifically told me that you're the most competent account manager he's worked with in 15 years, and that VPS would be happy to serve as a reference for Core Axis as long as you're managing their relationship. She smiled for the first time since I'd walked into her office. Also, your new salary is $95,000 base plus commission, and you'll be eligible for our executive bonus program. Sound acceptable? 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office, Jason's former office, though I tried not to think about that, reviewing quarterly reports when Marcus knocked on my door.
Hey, boss.
The VPS Phoenix implementation is complete, and Russell wants to schedule a call about expanding to their new Texas facility. Boss still sounded weird, but I was getting used to it. How's the team feeling about the Texas project timeline?
Confident.
We learned a lot from Phoenix, and the compliance requirements are actually less complex than Michigan.
Marcus grinned.
Plus, Ava says Russell is so happy with our work that he's not going to micromanage this one. After Marcus left, I pulled up my email and found a message from Sasha with the subject line Executive Mentorship Program, congratulations. The message was short: Leah, based on your performance managing the VPS account and your successful transition to the Regional Account Director role, would like to invite you to join Core Axis's Executive Mentorship Program. This includes quarterly strategy sessions with senior leadership, cross-training in business development, and potential participation in our IPO planning process.
Let me know if you're interested. Sasha.
I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window at the Denver skyline. 8 months ago, I'd been fighting for the right to stay involved in a client relationship I'd built from scratch. Today, I was managing 7 major accounts, leading a team of 12 people, and being invited to help plan the company's future. My computer chimed with a new email from Ava Chen. Leah, Russell asked me to pass along that VPS's board meeting went great today. The presentation you helped us prepare about our digital transformation results was apparently very impressive. 3 board members asked for Core Axis's contact information for their own companies. Hope you're ready for some new business development opportunities.
Ava.
I opened a new folder in my email client and labeled it Strategic Growth Opportunities. Then I scrolled down to an old folder I'd forgotten about, labeled Micromanaged, and hovered my mouse over the delete button. After a moment, I clicked delete and watched 8 months of frustration disappear. My phone rang. The caller ID showed Russell Danner's direct line. Hi Russell, how can I help you? Leah, I just got out of a board meeting where we discussed our digital transformation results. I won't bore you with the details, but I wanted you to know that VPS is planning some significant growth over the next 18 months, and we're going to need a technology partner who can scale with us.
He paused.
Are you interested in discussing what that might look like? I pulled out a notebook and uncapped my pen.
Absolutely.
Tell me what you're thinking. Some things never change. I still took detailed notes, still asked follow-up questions about implementation challenges, still cared more about long-term client success than short-term commission checks. But now, when I built those relationships and delivered on those promises, I got to see them through to completion. I got to be the person who answered the phone when clients called with problems, and the person who celebrated with them when projects succeeded. And occasionally, when new regional account managers got a little too confident about their ability to manage relationships they hadn't built, I got to share a story about the importance of understanding your client's business before you try to sell them solutions. The moral of the story, I'd tell them, isn't about office politics or revenge. It's about competence. It's about the fact that in B2B sales, your clients care more about results than titles, more about trust than presentations, and more about solutions than ego. Jason learned that lesson eventually, though it took him about 6 months in the training department and a significant pay cut. He's actually quite good at internal training. Turns out his presentation skills are perfect for teaching new hires about CRM systems and proposal writing. Me? I learned that sometimes the best way to handle workplace politics is to ignore them entirely and focus on doing excellent work. Not because excellence always gets rewarded, but because it's the only thing you can completely control. And occasionally, if you're very lucky and very persistent, excellence gets noticed by the people who matter most, your clients. Everything else is just details.